Something is breaking inside professional tennis right now. And the people closest to the sport, the ones who have dedicated their entire lives to understanding it, cannot fully explain what they are watching. The analysts are confused. The coaches are scratching their heads. The executives who have spent 30 years building this industry around a very specific set of rules are sitting in boardrooms staring at data that simply refuses to make sense by any traditional measurement they have ever used. And the deeper you go into it, the more disorienting it becomes, because what is happening right now violates every principle the sport was built on. Picture this. A 20-year-old woman. No Grand Slam trophy on her shelf. No major final appearance on her resume. Ranked somewhere between 30th and 40th in the world, meaning there are dozens of players ahead of her with stronger credentials, longer track records, and more titles. And yet the moment tournament organizers sit down to decide which match deserves the showcase court, the prime slot, the maximum spotlight, they choose hers. Every single time. Not because a computer told them to. Not because any rule requires it. Because if they bury her match in the schedule, thousands of ticket holders get up and leave before the top-ranked players in the world even begin their warm-ups. That is not a rumor circulating in tennis gossip circles. That is a logistical problem being solved in real time by real people managing a real sport. Tournament directors are literally building their daily schedules around a player who has not yet won the thing the sport considers its most important prize. And when you step back and stare at that reality directly, it raises a question that nobody inside tennis has a comfortable answer to. Her name is Alexandra Eala. And before this story goes any further, stop for one moment, because the surface question about her is not the interesting one. Everyone asks how talented she is. That question barely scratches what is actually going on. The question worth asking, the question that is quietly unsettling the foundations of how professional sport thinks about fame, value, and attention, is something far stranger and far more revealing. How does a person become the gravitational center of a global sport before collecting a single championship? How does an athlete with no major titles end up drawing more eyes, more emotional investment, and more global noise than players who have spent a decade winning everything in sight? And when you start genuinely pulling on that thread, you discover that the answer stretches far beyond tennis into something much larger, into questions about identity, about belonging, about what actually creates meaning in the digital age. And the starting point of this entire story is somewhere almost nobody would have thought to look. Tennis has never had a home in the Philippines. This is not a criticism. It is simply a geographic and cultural truth that anyone working in the sport will confirm without hesitation. The infrastructure required to build professional-level tennis players from scratch, the academies, the coaching pipelines, the government funding programs, the junior development circuits, none of it exists in the Philippines the way it exists in France or Germany or the United States or Spain. The sporting conversation in the Philippines has always revolved around two things: basketball, which is practically religion there, and boxing, which has produced some of the most celebrated fighters in the history of combat sports. Athletes who made an entire nation stop breathing for 12 rounds at a time. Tennis was something watched from a distance on a satellite feed, beautiful and impressive and belonging to somewhere else entirely. It was not part of the Filipino sporting identity. Not even close. Which is exactly why the early chapters of Alexandra Eala's story carry such a strange electricity. Because scouts began noticing something in this girl from Manila that they genuinely struggled to categorize. The word promising felt inadequate, not because they were being dramatic, but because what they were observing did not fit neatly into the language typically used for teenage prospects. It was something rawer and harder to quantify. And before the tennis world could fully process what it was seeing, something happened that instantly elevated the entire story. Rafael Nadal, 22 Grand Slam titles, the single most mentally ferocious competitor the sport of tennis has ever put on a court, made a decision. He opened the doors of his academy in Mallorca, Spain, to this teenage girl from Manila. Anyone who truly understands what Nadal represents in tennis culture understands the full weight of that sentence. This is not a person who distributes opportunities casually. This is not someone who lends his name to young players as a form of charity or good publicity. When Nadal identifies a young athlete and brings them into his environment, he is making a declaration. A serious, considered, reputationally consequential declaration that this person has something worth investing in at the highest level. The tennis community registered that signal immediately, and then it held its breath, because it had seen talented players come through elite academies before and fall short of the ceiling everyone predicted for them. There was cautious optimism. There was tempered excitement. There were skeptics with their arms crossed, ready to file this away as another beautiful story that never quite completed itself. Then 2022 arrived, and the skeptics ran out of road. Flushing Meadows, New York. The US Open, one of the 4 most prestigious tennis tournaments on earth. The junior girls singles final. And standing on that court, competing for a title in a tournament that the Philippines had never once claimed at any level in its entire history, was Alexandra Eala. She won. Cleanly. Convincingly. Historically. The first Filipino ever, man or woman, junior or senior, to lift a Grand Slam title of any kind. A door that had been closed for as long as the sport had existed in that country swung open in a single afternoon on a hard court in Queens. What happened in the hours and days that followed is where this story begins to evolve into something that transcends sport entirely. The clip of that moment did not circulate inside the tennis community and stay there. It broke out. It spread across platforms, across languages, across demographics that had zero relationship with professional tennis and had never developed any. Filipinos who had never watched a single professional match, who could not name a WTA ranking or explain what a tiebreak is, were watching that clip on cracked phone screens in the middle of the night, and some of them were crying, and they could not have fully explained why if asked. That specific reaction, deeply emotional from people with no prior attachment to the sport, is not a footnote in this story. It is the key that unlocks everything. Because that moment in New York was not merely a sporting result. It was a mirror. For 115 million people spread across 7,000 islands, a young woman had just stood on one of the most watched stages on the planet and shown them something of themselves. Not a version of another country's success. Their own. For the first time. And the feeling that creates in a population, the sudden, unexpected recognition of yourself in a space you were never supposed to occupy, does not produce casual fans. It produces people who feel personally connected to every match, every point, every win and loss that follows. She went professional. And the period between that New York triumph and the match that made the entire world pay attention is the part most coverage skips over, which is a mistake, because it is the part that built everything. The professional circuit is not glamorous at the early stages. It is grinding through qualifying draws in cities with no crowds and no cameras. It is flying economy across multiple time zones for a first-round match against a seasoned opponent who has been doing this for a decade. It is winning matches that nobody tweets about and losing matches that teach you things no academy can put in a curriculum. Eala did all of it. Against fully grown professional adults. In conditions designed to expose every weakness in a young player's game. She dropped matches she was favored to win. She dragged herself across the finish line in matches she had no business surviving. And she kept returning. Week after week. Month after month. Not chasing headlines. Just working. What the Nadal Academy instilled in her was never just technical. The mechanics of a baseline game, the positioning, the serve. Those things can be taught to any sufficiently talented player. What Mallorca built was something far more durable. The psychological architecture to compete at full intensity without external validation. To believe in the outcome before the evidence arrives. To treat a moment of total adversity not as a signal to retreat but as an invitation to dig deeper. That mentality is not common. In a sport where the margins between winning and losing are measured in millimeters and milliseconds, it is arguably the most valuable asset any competitor can possess. Miami, 2025. Circle this moment in red. She entered the WTA 1000 tournament there as a wildcard entrant, meaning the tournament literally had to bypass the standard qualification criteria and issue her a special invitation just to get her into the draw. Her ranking at that point did not entitle her to a spot. She was there on merit as assessed by human beings, not by the computer rankings that govern professional tennis. And then, systematically, she began eliminating players. Not escaping with narrow victories. Eliminating, playing with a clarity and controlled aggression that had observers checking whether they had the right name attached to the right player. Round after round. Names falling that were not supposed to fall to someone at her stage. And then Iga Swiatek walked onto the opposite side of the net. If you need context for what that name means in women's tennis right now, Swiatek has won multiple Grand Slams. She spent years as the undisputed world number one. She is the kind of player whose opponents often look defeated before the first ball is struck, not because they lack confidence, but because her statistical dominance over the field has been so total and so sustained that the psychological weight of facing her is its own obstacle. She is, by every rational measure, one of the greatest players of her generation. Alexandra Eala defeated her. The reaction was instantaneous and enormous. Sports media that normally treats women's tennis as a secondary story led with the result. Social platforms showed the clip reaching numbers typically associated with viral entertainment content, not tennis highlights. And in Manila, where it was well past midnight, something extraordinary happened across the city simultaneously. Living rooms erupted. Streets filled with sound. In neighborhoods across the capital, the noise of people celebrating poured out of open windows into the night air. For a tennis match. In a country where tennis had never been part of the national sports identity, the semi-finals of a WTA 1000 event became a moment of collective national experience on the scale of something far larger. She finished that tournament having entered ranked outside the top 100 and exited ranked inside it. First Filipino woman ever to reach a WTA 1000 semifinal. A record so unprecedented that there was no previous holder of it to compare against. Now here is the question that produces visible discomfort in tennis executives when posed directly. Why did Alexandra Eala's social media engagement during that tournament exceed the player who ultimately won the title? Why were her opening round matches pulling larger live audiences than established top 10 players were drawing to their quarterfinals? Why has the WTA, an organization whose entire promotional logic has historically been organized around rankings, trophies, and champion narratives, begun centering its marketing conversations around a player who has not yet won a major? What is actually happening here, and why does it feel so different from anything the sport has encountered before? The first layer of the answer lives in geography and community. The Filipino diaspora is not a small group of people scattered thinly across the globe. It is one of the largest, most geographically distributed, and most culturally cohesive migrant communities on Earth. More than 10 million people living outside the Philippines, embedded in cities across North America, the Middle East, Europe, East Asia, and beyond. And this community does not passively observe. When something touches a shared sense of Filipino identity and pride, the response is immediate, coordinated, and overwhelming in scale. When Eala competes, the data patterns on major platforms do not look like a popular athlete's fanbase activating. They look like a simultaneous national event. Hashtags reach global trending status within minutes. Not because of Manila alone, but because the community exists in every time zone. Streaming figures spike in markets that have historically shown almost no interest in women's tennis. Engagement pours in from regions where the WTA had essentially zero digital footprint before. The organization's data teams are watching this happen in real time, and what they are reading is this. One player, not yet 21 years old, is delivering audience growth in demographics and territories that years of targeted marketing campaigns never cracked. The commercial implications of that are genuinely significant. And no one engineered it. No one planned it. She is simply competing, and the world is responding. The second layer is Mallorca's shadow, the way Rafael Nadal's philosophy travels through everything Eala does on a court, and what that does to a very specific and very loyal global audience. Nadal built something rare in professional sport. A fan community that did not just admire his results but internalized his values. The relentless pursuit of every point. The refusal to treat any situation as lost until it mathematically is. The visible, unguarded, genuine emotional investment in every single rally. People who loved Nadal loved those things about him specifically, not just the trophies. So when those same qualities appear in a young left-handed player trained at his academy, playing with that identical brand of total commitment on every point, something activates in that audience that no marketing budget could replicate. They feel a connection that is organic and personal. They begin following her story not because anyone directed them to, but because something in her reminds them of something they already loved. Eala's fan base is not just Filipino. Millions of former Nadal loyalists worldwide have quietly adopted her, and the combined gravitational pull of those two communities, overlapping and reinforcing each other, creates an audience phenomenon that the sport has genuinely never had to process before. The third layer is the rarest of the three. It is what she does to the people watching, including the ones who walked in knowing nothing about tennis and walked out unable to stop thinking about her. Watch one of her comeback points. Find one where she is facing elimination, a third set, a tiebreak, match point against her, and watch what happens in her body language in the seconds before she serves or returns. There is no retreat. There is no visible armor going up. What you see instead is someone leaning forward into the pressure. Someone who looks, impossibly, more alive the closer the situation comes to ending her. She sprints to balls that should be unreachable. She manufactures angles that have no right to exist from her position on the court. She wins points that the mathematics of the rally said she had already lost. And then she screams, in Filipino, raw and unscripted, caught by the courtside microphones before any broadcast can manage it. No translator required. You do not hear the words. You feel the entire message. That is a person experiencing the present moment at full intensity. That is someone for whom the match is not a performance being managed but a living thing happening completely in real time. In an era where so much of professional sport is packaged, controlled, and delivered through a layer of media training and carefully calibrated public persona, that kind of unfiltered authenticity does not just attract attention. It creates devotion. She is 20 years old. She is still inside the phase of her career where nobody yet knows what the completed version of her story looks like, including her. That uncertainty is not a weakness in how audiences relate to her. It is the central source of the connection. The athletes who define eras are compelling partly because of their achievements and partly because of the phase when those achievements were still in formation, when every match could pivot the narrative, when the ceiling was genuinely unknown, when watching felt less like witnessing an established legacy and more like standing at the edge of something extraordinary still assembling itself in real time. That is the window Eala currently occupies. And the audiences finding her are finding her specifically because they can feel that window, that sense of something enormous not yet arrived but unmistakably close. By early 2026, the rankings confirmed what the crowds and the engagement metrics had already been saying. World number 29, the highest any Filipino tennis player, in the history of both the men's and women's professional tours, has ever been positioned. Not by a narrow margin. By a distance that makes the record feel almost surreal when you say it aloud. She reached that position while managing a doubles schedule simultaneously, while navigating a sponsorship portfolio, while fielding media requests from dozens of countries, while absorbing the concentrated expectation of more than 100 million people who have decided that her results are not just hers. Wins belong to the whole country. Losses are processed communally, like a shared grief that passes and leaves everyone more determined for the next match. She carries that weight without appearing crushed by it, not because she pretends it does not exist, but because she has found a way to let it enlarge her rather than diminish her. That is a form of psychological maturity that most professional athletes spend an entire career trying to develop. So return to the original question. The uncomfortable one. The one the sport cannot cleanly resolve. How does someone become the biggest name in the room before owning the biggest trophy in the building? For most of the history of professional sport, that question had only one answer. They do not. Fame required achievement. Attention was earned through results. The ranking column told you who mattered, and the ranking column was fed by tournament wins and Grand Slam titles and years of sustained excellence at the highest level. That system made sense. In a world before instant global distribution of content, before diaspora communities could mobilize in real time across continents, before a single point in a match could reach 50 million screens within the hour. In that world, the trophy was the only mechanism available to signal significance. You won. People found out. They cared. That world is not the current world. The current world distributes significance differently. It responds to narrative, to emotional truth, to the feeling a competitor generates in people watching, whether those people are lifelong tennis devotees or someone who stumbled onto a 30-second clip at midnight and has not been able to stop thinking about it since. Fame is no longer purely downstream of achievement. Sometimes it runs parallel. Sometimes it runs ahead. And in Alexandra Eala's case, it has arrived with a completeness and a global reach that her trophy count does not yet explain, and that no one in the sport's leadership fully anticipated. The women who have won Grand Slams in recent years will always own those titles. The history embedded in those results is permanent. But what is also permanent, and what is becoming more obvious with each passing tournament, is that there is one player right now whose entrance draws a different kind of response from the crowd, whose name trends before her match begins, whose story has crossed the borders of sport into something felt by people who otherwise would never have known this world existed. What is coming is not yet here. That is the entire point. The thunder you can hear is still building. The thing everyone can feel approaching has not fully arrived. And the people who are paying attention now, right now, in this moment before the narrative is complete and the conclusion is written, those are the ones who will one day say they were present for the beginning of something that changed what this sport looks like. Alexandra Eala has not yet won a Grand Slam. She is 20 years old, ranked 29th in the world, carrying an entire nation's dreams into every match she plays. And the sport she competes in is already rearranging itself around her presence. Already clearing space for what it can sense is coming. The noise surrounding her right now is not the sound of arrival. It is the sound of something larger than any of us have fully witnessed yet, still accelerating, still building, still becoming. And the only question left worth asking is a simple one. Are you watching closely enough?